All right. Almost everybody is here. I'm also doing some quick testing for our YouTube live right now. So if you don't already know, we are simultaneously streaming to YouTube right now. The link is in the latest tweet we have. And I hear myself. Awesome. We're live, both on YouTube and on Twitter.
Hello, world.
Okay. Hello. All right. So let's get started here. I don't see Wendy on stage. Could one of you make sure that that happens? Okay. So anyway, let's get started here. Welcome everybody to Hashing It Out, where we talk about everything Nervos and everything crypto. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest. You know her from Twitter, from YouTube, and of course TikTok, where she's extremely popular. And she's also been recently featured on Time Magazine, in addition to all the previous places she's been: Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, NBC News, Fox Business, CNBC, Forbes, and a whole big list of other places. And most recently, she's been named the official burger flipper of El Salvador by El Presidente himself, Nayib Bukele. I'm talking about, of course, the one and only Crypto Wendy O. Welcome to the show, Wendy. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to hang out with you guys and stuff. And I'm happy that I'm on time, because I almost didn't make it on time this morning, but we always sort it out.
Yeah, well, no problem at all. We're all here and we're all ready to go. So we're going to go right into some topics immediately here, because I have a feeling this is going to be a very short hour. Number one here, this is a follow-up from last week, actually. Facebook's crypto project is officially dead. And so we talked about this last week. This is, of course, Facebook's permissioned cryptocurrency Diem, which has been in development for several years now. It actually started in 2017. And it had all kinds of regulatory problems with the government that was coming down on it. Eventually just got shut down, more or less, by the Federal Reserve, who put pressure on Silvergate, which was their banking partner. That was a final blow to the project. They basically gave up, went a different way, and they have now sold all assets to Silvergate for a whopping $182 million USD. But I'm curious about this, Wendy. What did you think about this whole situation? And let me preface that by saying, I know that I don't think that you're the biggest fan of Mark Zuckerberg. I saw on October 28th, 2021, you tweet out, Zuck should have rebranded Facebook to Beta instead of Meta. And that got, I believe, 927 likes. So tell me, what do you think about all this?
Well, a couple of things. I generally don't care for a lot of these large, ivory tower people. And one of the reasons why is because I think that their intentions are very fake. Maybe that it did start out in a place of, we want to build, we want to create this really, really cool stuff. But throughout people's careers, they have choices to whether they can make. They can choose to continue to do good things, or they can choose to kind of get devoured by greed. And we see a lot of this happen with a lot of politicians, as they start off really small. They start off boots on the ground, they're in the streets, they're doing all these really great things, and then they change. And a lot of times they change, number one, with money, and number two, they get peer pressured to do specific things. And it's easier to fall into peer pressure and to do things that are cool, to do things that make you not a target. So I feel like a lot of people, especially in big tech and government, they kind of go through this route because they're scared of being isolated. They're scared of being the black sheep. And you see that in crypto too. You see it all over the place. It's kind of human nature. But as far as what's going on with Facebook's Meta and them selling it and all of that type of stuff, it just doesn't sound like the whole story is not adding up to me. I feel like we're not being told all of the pieces. I feel like there's a lot of missing information that is kind of key to what's happening behind closed doors. So I don't trust it. I think that Facebook does have to do something with cryptocurrency, but it might not be kind of pushed on the forefront to where the general population is able to kind of see what's happening. So I don't know. It's just not sitting. Something is not sitting right with me. It's hard for me to articulate and hard for me to explain, but there's something that's not adding up for me. It just doesn't make sense why Facebook is having all these regulatory issues when the SEC and different legislation bodies are willing to kind of work with other people. So there's something not right. I feel like it will reemerge. It will get rebranded again, but it's going to be under the very, very strict control of the United States government and the legalized cartels.
Legalized cartels. I love that.
That's exactly what they are, is legal. They're literally legalized cartels. People think that the U.S. government is their friend, and they look to the U.S. government for guidance on different things. But what they fail to see is that, I don't know, I feel like the United States government is just one big, large predatory corporation, and it is a legalized cartel because they're allowed to move and act, and they get certain protections. And people of the United States are not given those same freedoms or protections. And it just doesn't sit right with me in any way, shape, or form. And I know I'm just a little person; my voice doesn't matter, but I'm still going to call it what it is, and that's what it is to me.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, there's actually a quote that says, let me see if I can get it right. It's something like, tyranny is when the government is allowed to do things that the average citizen is not allowed to do. And that quote actually comes from none other than the founding father, Thomas Jefferson, of this country. So, I mean, it seems to fit in a lot of different scenarios. And I, for one, was not happy to hear about Deem being shut down. And this is because it was done under some type of regulatory influence. Like, I'm not a fan of Zuckerberg. He's kind of a lizard person to me. Like, if lizard people exist, I'm pretty sure he is actually one. But I don't see any reason that he should not have been allowed to compete in this space with all other cryptocurrencies out there. Even if it wasn't truly a cryptocurrency, it was some kind of a permission system or something. I mean, like, we're going to see the central bank digital currencies come out for sure from many different countries. And why not have something in the middle? Why couldn't they actually be out there and competing alongside Bitcoin and all the other ones?
To be honest with you, and I don't have any proof to back this up. This is just more of me kind of taking a step back and observing. I really have a feeling that Facebook is going to be pivotal in the United States. Oh my God, I can't talk right now. It is going to be very important and crucial to the United States CBDC, to the U.S. digital dollar, because Mark Zuckerberg has the cash. They have the resources to go ahead and create this thing. I just feel that the narrative is switching, and we also have to be very, very careful what you believe that the mainstream media puts out, because a lot of times they put out these pieces and they're very, very poorly worded. They're very poorly researched. And it makes me really wonder and curious the narrative that they're pushing out, because the media is in control of the different narratives that are spun, regardless if it's in crypto, if it's in healthcare, if it's the food industry. They spin out these narratives and they put out half truths. So I think it's important for people to read the news, to pay attention what's happening in the news, but also to educate themselves and say, okay, I read this and then I listened to this person. I heard all this information. So absorb the information the same way that you would if you were a child learning to walk or learning to ride a bike, and then come up with your own ideas because of the different information that you've absorbed. Just don't listen to one source and say, this is great, this is, the end all be all. And I tell my audience this all the time on YouTube. Like, I'm human. I make mistakes. I do my best to report on things transparently and honestly and non-biased. But at the same time, if I say something that doesn't sit well with you or you disagree with, talk to me about it. Let's come together. Let's be respectful and mature. But at the same time, let's also kind of talk about what the scenario is and why you don't agree with my opinion on it.
Yeah, I agree with you completely on all of that, except for one point, which is follow the news. That's a different subject entirely. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but it's so hard to get the correct information these days, especially with things like the Trusted News Initiative, which is basically government-enforced censorship of media. I honestly don't know really where to go in most cases. Like, there isn't any clear source to go. You have to do such a huge sampling around and bounce through different avenues just to try to get a general idea of what's actually true and what is just more or less propaganda because of the censorship that's occurring. So anybody else, any comments on Facebook before we move on here?
I was thinking about that idea of I don't know where to go to get objective information. It seems like a market failure. because we're on the topic of Facebook, right? And if the influence of these companies makes it impossible for people to find news, but people want to find actual news and objective information, why isn't the market fixing that? Is it a monopoly kind of thing? I don't know. I mean, I think this is along the lines of why they couldn't have deemed, because they'd be too powerful. It just seems like something isn't right.
Well, yeah, I share your sentiment there. I mean, and I think it is partially because of the monopolistic nature of social media these days. But it's there's absolutely something going on. It's the Trusted News Initiative. I mean, that's public information. There's nothing that is a conspiracy about it. It was started because it was basically started, I believe, through the Democratic campaigns to fight misinformation. At least that's what they call it. But whatever they deem to be misinformation, they can censor regardless if it is or is not. It's very one-sided. It ends up being that way. So, I mean, that's proliferated into all social media and into all the news agencies as well now. It's basically if you say no to this, you're in some really big trouble. So they have such a strong arm in this that it's really hard for anybody to get out there. And that's why we need decentralized platforms to really step in here. There's a huge need for it right now. I know there's a lot of technical hurdles and everything, and especially adoption. Just getting adoption with any of these platforms is absolutely a tremendous effort. But we need this to happen. The entire world needs there to be a clear source of information, of unrestricted information, I should say. There's always going to be noise. There's always going to be some kind of misinformation out there. But without this, we don't even have an opportunity to get a real view. So that's something that I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that we start to see this in the next generation of crypto that comes out, which we're talking about the next 10 years from now. This is really a big thing that I'm really hoping for.
I want to also kind of close with this and say that a lot of this type of, these laws that get put into place, one thing that's very important to know, anytime a law gets passed or approved in the United States, it is so hard to get these things repealed, regardless of how unethical they are. So I always remind people, pay attention to what's being pushed out. And that's why I'll do TikToks and I'll kind of report on all of these different laws the United States kind of wants to push through. And people are like, Wendy, you're stupid. Why, you're not talking about crypto. This is not related, but it actually is related, because if it is a law that they want to kind of go ahead and push through, that's going to stipulate different things that we can and can't do with cryptocurrency, it's going to impact the entire market. And I think it's important to kind of remind people that realistically, the United States isn't perfect. It does have a lot of flaws, but we do have the opportunity to speak out. We do have the opportunity to vote and to, protest in a peaceful way, to say, I don't like this. I think this is a bad idea. And I think people forget that we can write to the SEC, we can write to the congressmen and women, we can write to the local government, city officials, and say, hey, this is what we want done, hear our voice, because we're the ones that are voting these people in power. So I think it's part of a collective initiative that people in the United States need to kind of stop just sitting on the internet, complaining on the internet, because your voice isn't going to be heard if you're whining on the internet. Your voice is going to be heard if you're actually taking action to, talk to your community about these different things and to talk to your representatives and you have to physically take an action, whether it be writing an email or, to making a phone call. But that's the way that you're going to see change. And I feel like social media has made people in the United States so lazy to where we are like, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to, complain about it on Twitter or whatever. And I catch myself doing this too. But realistically, generations prior to us, they actually got up and they made a commotion and they made noise. So that's just where I stand on that.
No, absolutely. That's pretty much a given. Hitting the like button is not enough. And I think we're all guilty of that at some point. I definitely am as well.
Definitely. I was just going to add really quick too, that it's almost as if people need to kind of group together and band together, work together in smaller groups to reject the mainstream news media and find their own more expertise sources of news. And cryptocurrencies and decentralized digital communities, DAOs, could actually really help in aiding in that. So I feel overall pretty positive so far. I do. I still have faith. Yeah,
I agree with you. I think there's a path to the future, and I agree with you. I've known people. My grandfather, one of them, who he grew up in a different time where the media was a little more on. Somebody who was going from somebody who was completely clarified as what he thought.
I'll have that old grandparent who like is like guilty of that as well. Totally.
Right.
It's also a generational thing too. Like, I mean, and I think that's why I talk about the importance of really understanding somebody's culture and where they came from, and maybe how they got to the United States, different things like that. Because if you spend time and you actually get to know a person, even if it's somebody that you disagree with, if you can actually understand the person that they are, or the different situations or the things that they've experienced that's made them into the person they are today, it's a lot easier to resonate with them, and it's a lot easier to kind of come to a happy medium. And you might not necessarily agree, but you can at least say, I respect your journey. I respect you. I'm going to showcase decency to you. And I think that a lot of times we kind of forget to do that. Everybody's guilty of it, but I think it's very important to kind of
always another side there, and you got to remember the person on the other side, even if they disagree with you 180 degrees, there's usually a reason why they do. It's not that they're being completely irrational. It's that they have something in their mind, some picture, some viewpoint of the world that maybe you weren't exposed to. So there's usually a reason. And on that note, I want to pivot to the next headline here, which is Nobel Prize. He's gone on record as actually saying that Bitcoin is evil. He believes it to be so. So tell me, Wendy, I know you have some strong feelings on this one. What do you think about
bringing to me? It bothers me that they can sit here and they can tell Americans